Hello and welcome to the director's commentary for my latest short film, Bridgewater Street. This video is going to be a very long video to start with, but it's going to be aimed towards film fans in the way of film theory. So if you are the sort of person that really likes to get into what a film is about rather than just the experience of watching it, this video is for you. So right now I'm going to leave out a big spoiler warning because I'm not just going to spoil the film's ending, but I'm going to spoil the entire experience of watching the film. I'm going to be talking the whole way through it and I'm going to be pausing the screen, so if you haven't seen the film, please click the link on screen now or the link in the description to go over and watch it and then come back and watch this. Okay, so let's get right into it. So right here we automatically start fading in on the homeless man's life. This first shot lasts about 40 seconds or something like that, and it acts as an equilibrium. It is normal life for our character before things start to change. Now there's no disequilibrium in this entire film really, it's just his life, but this one shot or scene acts as an equilibrium because you need structure in a feature film, and sometimes I find, well, in my own films, that's where things have gone wrong, where I've not looked at story structure and thought, just because this is a short film, it doesn't need that, but it really does. It allows us to relate to the character much easier, and that's what this one shot does. Also, the fact that it fades in is, I think that's quite important. Now, when this was storyboarded, I storyboard all my projects down to a T, and this was no exception. And I didn't plan a fade in. I planned this shot and I planned the zoom out, but we added the fade in afterwards after looking at Peter's reaction, the protagonist here. He acted as though he was waking up, and that wasn't in the script. It was something that he added to it himself. And then once I added the fade in, it looked literally like he was waking up in the middle of the night, and it was really, really cool to see because it showed that he couldn't get a decent night's sleep. It showed that his life was interrupted by all this noise. And then as we play through here, you'll see people pass through the frame like this, and that catches his attention. This shows what matters to the character and that he feels ignored. So that sets up the premise for the film, that this guy is invisible to the rest of the world. And you're going to hear me say this a lot throughout this director's commentary, but this entire film is based on the idea of a shift in society, and this is sort of that first look at it, and that's in the equilibrium before things change, and that's what we go into next. Also, for any of you equipment nerds, this was filmed on a Canon 5D with a 70 to 200mm lens and a 50mm lens as well. That's all we needed. And here we see, obviously, he checks his money and sees that he's not got enough, and that's quite sad to him because that's his entire life. Now this is when we cut into my favourite shots of the film personally, the time-lapse shots. I really like these for a number of reasons, but one of them being the meaning behind it, the actual effect I intend on this having on the audience, and I hope it has that intention. I'm not going to talk too much in depth on how we got the shots and the actual camera settings behind it, because I don't think that's relevant in a director's commentary. You can find that elsewhere. But let me talk about the meaning behind this first. Primarily being, it's reinforcing that shift in society, that difference between rich and poor. Now we're 53 seconds into the film at this point, and we've just left the homeless man in his equilibrium. We've seen him in everyday life. We've seen his entire life. It's just flat, it's bland, it's against that wall. And we did that all in one shot because it really sets in how boring his life is. We could have cut around a bit, we could have shown some interesting angles, but I didn't want to Hollywoodize his life or make it visually interesting. That was then saved for these shots because that shows there's a difference. Even in the music, you'll hear when we're on the homeless man, it's like theme music back when films used to have themes for different characters. The homeless man's theme is very somber. It's this piano sort of melody in a way, and it's calm yet uncomfortable. The music, by the way, was composed by an amazing composer, Gareth Thomas. He was wonderful to work with. And then you'll see when we jump into shots like this, the music goes much more upbeat and not quite club music, but very, very interesting. And that's something I spoke with Gareth about in a lot of detail, about how we wanted to show the shift in society through the music, and that's what we achieved here, I think. So we sort of juxtapositioned the two situations, showing these two classes of people. We're a world away. We see the homeless man's life, and then we see this. We cut to a completely opposite shot of rich people living happily. They're going back and forth in their busy lives, and they are happy, and that is something that we didn't see in the homeless man's life.
What is the sound of death?
That question then plays a big part later on.
You walk back and forth in your busy lives. You go in, enjoy what you have, and you go out.
Then here we're going to see another example of juxtapositioning the rich and the poor. This shot, all the shots of the last sequence of rich people moving around, that was all, we couldn't storyboard that because we couldn't predict what was going to happen on a night out in Manchester. We had to sort of guerrilla filmmaking style do that, and this was one of those perfect moments that I'm so happy we got, because straight after we see this shot to me symbolizes like warmth and compassion. The street lamp actually has cast a really nice light here on their faces. And I believe there was a street lamp just above their heads, and then we have this sort of blue light behind them from a huge projection or TV screen, and these two seem isolated from that, and as if the rest of the world at this point doesn't matter to them. And I think that's really, really cool and really impactful. And then the power comes from straight after we cut back to the homeless man. And it really does show that these two sets of people, even though they're in the same city and they're probably on the same sort of stretch of road at some point, they are, like I said earlier, a world away. And this is reinforced through the music, not just in the general way of the music, but also in the transition between the two. In here we're in the upbeat and we're about to cut back to the homeless man and his theme, but there's this sort of sound of a sharp razor cutting, and you'll hear that now, and that shows that there's a cut in society, as a shift as well in society. You'll hear it now.
I stay here.
I think that is a really, really cool way of showing a disconnect between two types of people, or two situations, or two places.
Envy what you have. I'm always here.
That transition, that car transition that we just used, that's got a lot of meaning behind it, and I love seeing transitions in film in Hidden. And I certainly didn't invent using a car to act as a transition or to hide transitions, but I really do love it, and I think I may have used it slightly too much in this, but this one was impactful to me because it had a lot of meaning behind it. I wanted to start out on a wide shot to show his loneliness, him being separated from the rest of the world, because we've just been on that shot of the couple hugging, and now we cut to this wide shot that I'll just get back to now. Yeah, we're on this wide shot, and I really like it because it sort of sets up his entire world here. This is everything for him. We've just seen so much for the rest of the world, and this is all he really has. And this can only be shown through the wide shot. We really get a sense of place in this shot. But then we obviously, after this, once the car transition has happened, we see someone walk past the homeless man and ignore him. And I didn't want to do that from this angle because I wanted to get loads of emotion from his face. So we had to cut into a close-up. And in my mind, when I was storyboarding this, I'd had to sacrifice this shot, which I didn't want to do, or we sacrifice this shot, which I also didn't want to do because I needed that close-up. So I had to find a way of cutting from a wide to a close-up without it looking weird, because doing it like this, it would have looked out of place. So I realised then I could hide the cut with a car, but it was more than just using it to hide something. It was taking an element from this world that we are creating and giving it a physical use in the film to actually be practical more than just a stylistic thing. So taking this car, this sort of symbol of wealth in this world, you'll see his reaction as well. He sort of sees this car coming through and he reacts to that. And cutting to a close-up then sort of shows the importance of this car and what this car represents to the character. Because that gives us motivation then to cut to a close-up so we don't have an unmotivated cut. But it sort of draws us in a bit more, not the fact that it's just a cut. Because to me, when I see a lot of cuts in a film, that is a director or a filmmaker saying to me, look at this now, look at this now, and look at this now. It's that idea of being shown something, and that's why sometimes too much cutting can take you out of it. So we want to bring the audience in. We hid that cut, and you'll see that again here if you watch that bit through.
Stay here. Envy what you have. I'm always here. Where can I go?
That was the main reason behind that, and I do think that worked well.
Any change, sir?
That's probably the worst bit. You can't see me, right? I see you, though.
This, the reasoning behind this shot is I wanted to make the Hilton seem as sleazy as possible. Now, this isn't a problem I have with the Hilton. I stayed in this hotel at one point, and it's a very nice hotel, and I have nothing wrong with it. But it was a sort of a representation of wealth, because everyone knows a hotel, the Hilton hotels in particular, are very nice. And because that was in Manchester and I wanted to film there, well, that's more going into depth on why I had the idea, but I wanted to use the Hilton as this, and I needed to show the Hilton from the homeless man's point of view. So it was made to be sleazy. So this pan up you'll see here, when we pan up to the Hilton, it's... I obviously don't like the colours here. I wish I'd done that better, but that's a different story entirely. But if you were to look at an advert for the Hilton or something like that, I was trying to think how I'd film a shot of their building. And all the time you'll see when someone's trying to make a building look good, they'll do a lovely little pan up from sort of normal horizontal level, panning up to the building to make it seem bigger, make it seem more powerful. And that just takes the general idea of shooting a low angle on something to make it seem more powerful. But then to make it seem sleazy, we added a pan upwards. And this is just because it's an unmotivated camera move, but also more than that, you see that a lot in corporate video and stuff like that. And that's what this shot is trying to put across, this sleazy style of it.
I see you, though. I see you check into your Hilton hotel, eat your food on...
This is an interesting shot. It was one of the last ones we got in the entire day. And it was so dark, the ISO was all the way up, the aperture was all the way open, and it was so dark around this sort of part of the image. But here, the marble backlights him perfectly. I think there must be some LED lights at the bottom, but not LED, sorry, but it lit around the chair and around his legs perfectly. And it sort of adds to that anonymity almost. This character has almost a bit of anonymity. And I think it's an interesting way of introducing a character. They say always introduce a character in an interesting way. The first time we see this character, we can barely see his head at all. And it was one of those accidental things, but given justification, it can add so much meaning to it.
Top floor and make your way down.
This shot was interesting to get because I wanted to really show this man as a wealthy character. There's only 2 times in this entire short film that we see characters walking that we care about, not just general citizens, characters that have relevance in the film. And in the 2 times we see these characters walking, they mean different things entirely because they're very different characters. The second time's with the homeless man, and we'll get to that later on, but this now is the rich man, and we're walking with him. The importance here is I wanted to only see one side of his face and just see sort of this side of him. And this is because in film, if you see the side of someone's face, you don't get the full picture. Now, a lot of filmmakers will use this technique, and I have took very heavily to that because that really speaks to me as a filmmaker. I see that very black and white, that is what that means. And to show this character was sort of not necessarily not trustworthy, but we don't fully get the idea about it, and we shot this from a side angle as opposed to being in front of him. I also wanted this shot as steady as possible, and we filmed it out of a car window as we tracked alongside him, and it was tricky to get this to be as steady as possible, but I think we got pretty close. And I do like this shot because it represents wealth and success. And also we get shooting this on a 50mm, we get quite a nice wide angle, not necessarily too much of a wide angle, but you get quite a good sense of place around the character. You get all this sort of graffiti backdrop around him, and he seems sort of away from all that. He is not caring about it. He's too busy going on what's on his phone. But you still get a good sense of place where you can see it all around you. You feel very comfortable. You're moving with him in a sleazy way, but you feel comfortable because you can see what's ahead of you and what's behind you. You're not in any state of worry about what's around you. And I'm only saying that now because it plays an important part later on.
Fine dressed suit, walking down my street, past me and saying...
I really like this shot, and this shot has a lot of meaning behind it. I'm not going to talk about lighting too much because I keep making that mistake of talking about lighting in a director's breakdown, and I need to get away from doing that. So I'm going to talk about the framing here. And firstly, I'd like to say there's a lot of negative space around this sort of side of him. And if we get into breaking down the 180-degree rule, anyone that knows about that, and if you're watching this, I assume you know about that, he is looking to the right of the frame, and we're going to cut to a reverse shot of another character who's looking to the left of the frame. They're making eye contact, basically. The 180-degree rule is splitting down the middle, and they're looking at each other. Now, traditionally speaking, if we've got the next character at this point of the frame, which is going to be the homeless man, we're about to cut to the homeless man, and he's about to be around here. If that's the case, traditionally speaking, the rich man would be framed around this side of the frame towards the left. But he's not. And that is done because I wanted to show the power dynamic, the difference in power between these two characters. I wanted to show that this rich man is almost oppressing this homeless man. Now, the homeless man, you'll notice here, is pushed right up against the right-hand side of the frame. There's nowhere else he can go because he is looking up to the rich man. He can't really go anywhere else from this point. However, the rich man, he can come over to this side of the frame. There's so much room, but he doesn't. This shows him sort of boxing in the homeless man and sort of squishing him up against the side of the frame, and this shows who's got all the power in the scene. Not to mention this is on a much closer shot of than the homeless man, and it really, in my mind, that shows that he's in control here. He is the image of sort of wealth and happiness. He isn't necessarily one character, but he is the face of rich and greed in this film. And he is definitely discriminating against this homeless man, and that is shown through the framing. And I'm a stickler for framing, and I wish I could film more dialogue scenes in short films, because that is like a director's playground for hidden meanings and what each person thinks. Truly, the idea behind the film was that you didn't have to listen to it, you could watch it and still understand what was going on. And I think this shot, and not his performance as well, but his performance aside, I think hopefully you'd still get the idea of what we were trying to show with this.
Sorry, bud, no change.
Of course you haven't. All I do is shoot it up my arm anyway, right? It gets cold out here at night. Really cold. I haven't had a drink in 2 days. I haven't eaten in 3.
This was an interesting shot to get, and that sort of it. I wanted the audience to feel uncomfortable at this point because we're starting to get the idea that something's wrong. He's just been speaking about the fact that he hasn't eaten or drank in quite a while, and you know that's not good for him. But how do we then show that through the framing? That's the first question I ask myself when I'm reading the script through and I'm thinking, okay, this is happening now. How do I want the audience to feel? And I want the audience to feel uncomfortable. So how can I physically show that? First of all, we've shot the rest of the film from quite a wide angle. If we've ever been on a close-up of the homeless man, it's been very flat on. We've been flat on with him, straight up front, or we've been on a wide shot. And that gives us a bit more... It distances us from what we're seeing, not only physically, but mentally as well. We are then distanced from the situation. It gives us that idea that we're watching on. But here, we break that rule that we've almost set for ourselves. We then cut to a close-up. We're back on the telephoto lens here, and we're zoomed all the way in. And this puts us very, very close to the homeless man, almost uncomfortably close. You have to think, would you ever be this close to another person, like, that you don't know? And hopefully not. And here we are very close to this character. So much so that we haven't been this close throughout the rest of the film. We've been on a wide shot. Everything that's happened with the homeless man has happened within the boundaries of the frame. And the camera's almost always been locked down. And I'm telling you this because those are rules we've almost set for ourselves, and now we break them. You'll notice we're very close. First off, I've already said that, but we're not on a tripod at this point. This is a handheld camera shot. Or actually, I think it was on a shoulder rig, but still, it's that free moving camera. And it's also unmotivated camera moves, which we haven't really done in this film so far unless something isn't right. So here, as the homeless man lies down, I told the actor who played him, Peter, I said, this is the last time your character lies down. Take your time with it. When you're lying down, you're trying to get comfortable, but you're in pain. So you might start lying down a bit, you might move something, so you might move back, and then you might... So it'll take a while, so take your time with it. But mainly, don't tell me what you're going to do. Move freely. And because I said this, that's exactly what he did, and it was great. But then there was this delay. There was a delay between what the actor was doing, what the subject of the film was doing, and what the camera was doing. So he'd move, and sometimes he'd go out of frame, and the camera's on this little delay trying to catch up, which makes us a bit more uneasy. He's now moving, we're very close to him, but he's moving around in a way that we are unsure of where he's going next. And that can make us feel uncomfortable. That combined with the close-up can almost be a bit disorientating for the audience. You don't have too much of a sense of space because there's this, that's about the wall, that's as close as you can get to any real thing to pinpoint your eyes on. It's like when you're on a boat and they say, look at the horizon, and use that as your point of space so you really know where you are. But when we're so close and moving around, it can disorientate us a bit, and we get uncomfortable, and it's hard to describe, but if we watch that through again, hopefully you'll really get to see what we're going for. Just pay attention to how the camera moves uncomfortably and how he isn't always in frame. It was hard for me just to get a still then of him where he wasn't blurry, so have a look.
In 2 days. I haven't eaten in 3. This city is a machine.
The framing is very
It
uncomfortable
works and it twists.
combined with the
turns.
amazing performance and how uncomfortable it is to watch someone go through this sort of coughing to death situation.
There's broken parts.
I'd also like to talk a lot about this next, not shot, but the next sequence of shots and what this really means, because this is where the film starts to get to its sort of its pinnacle, really, and I want to sort of talk about what that means and what I hope the audience got from that. So basically this is the character's sort of last walk before he passes away, and we first of all, I'd like to just say that we're watching from the front of him. So we're getting the full set of his face. This is the second time a character's walking in the film. The earlier one was with the rich man, but this character's completely opposite to him. And we're not on the side here, we're from the front. This is our protagonist, and this is the person we care most about in the film, and I wanted to show that. So we're bang smack on the front, on front of him, so we can see all his expression, and we can relate to him. This is the most relatable angle to see a person. So we're on his level as well, so we're with this character at this point, we're invested. But then it starts to get a bit uncomfortable because we're moving backwards. If you think about the audience, and you think about the camera, think about the camera as the audience. When you're framing a shot and you're filming something, you're not just pointing a camera somewhere, you're pointing the audience somewhere. And in this situation, we're doing something unnatural and we're moving the audience backwards. And if you're watching this, that then means you are moving down this dark alleyway backwards and you don't know what's behind you. And that's a scary thing. It's unnatural. And because of that, we're only seeing what's behind us and his face. So this forces, in my mind, this forces the audience to look at every single ounce of expression on this character's face to tell us what's behind us. We're looking, what is he seeing? What are we moving towards? And to add to this was filmed on a shoulder rig as well, so the camera's moving in a shaky way. It adds to that unpredictability that we've only just set up in the last shot of the film. Everything else has been very predictable and very predicted, and this is the opposite of that. So watch that through with that in mind.
Rusty parts and bits that don't work as well. And what do we do in that situation? Do we take those rusty parts and polish them? No, we replace.
And then at this point, the character sees something, and we are wondering at this point, what is it he has seen? And we've already been listening to the voiceover up until this point, and that's where I want to sort of dive a bit more in depth. The character is now talking about being replaced and about being a rusty part in a machine. And this obviously comes from the fact that I did write it, and I have this sort of thing about society and machines, and about machines being a metaphor for society and the world and the way we all fit into it. Now, that can be seen obviously through the Small Cog videos, and at the end of those, they're saying, I'm a professional small cog in a big machine. But then again, this is what the character's understanding at this point. He is understanding where he fits into it all. And this character, in my mind, he's not a homeless person that has sort of had forced this upon himself. A lot of the time when people sort of stereotype homeless people, they can think that they bring this on themselves. They'll say, when I give them money, where's that money going? But this character isn't like that. He used to be a member of society just like everyone else, and he fell upon hard times. And that is saying that he used to be a working part of this machine. He used to be just working like everyone else, and he fell upon hard times. This part of the machine became rusty, and that is him. He is the rusty part of the machine. And that's when he says this really important line. He says, do we take that rusty part and polish it? Or he says, do we take those rusty parts and polish them? No, we replace them. Now that's basically him saying that he was replaced. And just as he says that,
throw them away like they make
we
no
pan
difference.
into this window here, and we see this rich man. Now this is telling the audience he's replaced the homeless man. And this, like I said earlier, this guy isn't necessarily a character. He is the face of greed in this film. He represents wealth. He's here drinking a drink in a nice, warm, nice-looking restaurant, reading a menu. He is sort of, in a way, from the homeless man's perspective, everything that's wrong with society. And then this is where things get more interesting, because we have a person pass through the frame, and at this point,
the machine.
it turns into the homeless man. And as it does that, he says that it's how the machine works. Now this set once again backs up that point that the homeless man here used to be the rich man before he became homeless. Now this is him of the past. This is the homeless man of the past before he became homeless. So when I refer to homeless man of the past, this is who I'm talking about. So let's start to break down film theory. So here he is enjoying wealth and enjoying life, and this didn't really happen. This is the view from the current homeless man's point of view. And then something disturbing happens. He recognizes him. The homeless man of the past recognizes homeless man of the present, and this shot represents the fact that this is how he used to look upon the homeless population, and he used to be part of the problem at this point, and he would discriminate, and that's an interesting point of view, that how the tables have turned for him, and he can look back on who he used to be with shame, really, on the person he used to be. And it's that view again on society and how certain events can change us as well.
I'm old.
And then here we see the reverse shot of the homeless man of the present reacting to himself and reacting to him of the past. Now, this shot speaks a lot to me. This shot meant so much to me that this became the concept art for the film. This is currently my desktop background, this sort of cut-in of his face with a black background around it, and it's also the film's poster. And that's because this shot, in the terms of lighting, speaks a lot as well. And I don't want to talk too much about lighting, but this is important to the story. We lit him from the right side of the frame with an LED light with a blue gel. Now what this did is it lit this side of his face and left the rest of it in darkness. This was because we are now, for the first time, not getting the full picture. We're finding out something about the homeless man that we did not know before. And that's what this shot means. But then the narration sort of supports this by saying it's when it starts to sink into him that he's a small part of a machine, but he is rusty. He is no longer fit to purpose. He's no longer needed. And the moral of this film, as dark as it sounds, is that nobody is really that important. And the truth is, this is a bit of personal belief at this point, but no matter what happens to anybody, no matter the tragedies the world goes through, the next day, everybody wakes up and moves on with their lives. Things will continue. And that's what this homeless man's thinking about. This is an intelligent character for one. He's not dumb by any means, but he holds a very strong viewpoint on society. And he's now thinking about how he is now fallen upon hard times, but no one stopped and helped him. The world's moved on. And that is supported through the time lapses of the city, showing that this is one living organism. And just because one part of this machine is faulty, they don't stop and polish it, they replace it, and the world moves on. And that's what this voiceover, this lighting, this shot all supports.
I'm rusty. I'm replaceable.
And what a beautiful performance there with the crying, it's amazing. And then something weird happens at this point. The character, well, the actor Peter, I told him he had to go into this restaurant, and we were filming from outside. And the instruction I gave was, look rich, look happy, and obviously look at yourself, like in the script it says. And that was pretty much it. He then did this. He started laughing. It was so haunting to see. He was reacting to him of the past, and he laughed. He laughed, and that was truly terrifying, and that's something I didn't write, but it added so much. It was disturbing. It spoke volumes about society, that he's absorbed by his phone, and it was so meaningful to me. And I really do love this shot, and I love what that added to it. And then we obviously see the end for this character. We see this is where he dies. But initially, we didn't do this from a close-up. In the storyboard, this was done from... let me just get to the shot here. It was done from a wide shot. Now, that entire scene of him dying was going to play out from this shot here. But that wouldn't work, and Peter, the main actor, said this to me, that we weren't going to get all the emotion we needed, which is very true, because for him to die and for the audience to know that he died was important, and we weren't going to get that from this wide shot. We didn't see enough of his face, so I needed to keep this wide shot because it's very important later, a few seconds later in the film. But it was very important that we get this close-up of him dying, because at this point he coughs for the last time and slowly exhales, and we can tell that he's died. If we did this from a wide shot, we wouldn't see it. So we had this insert of a cut-in where we see the homeless man pass on, and this is an amazing performance from Peter. This isn't easy to do what he's just done and put himself out there like that, and it's so convincing. It's brutal to watch. And then we cut to this wide shot. This is where the audience now knows their protagonist has passed on. And this is now cut to a wide just to sort of show his place in life, but also in the framing as well. Now, he's quite small in the frame. We see everything of relevance in his life. And I do love this shot. I love the way the tin can is positioned like directly in the frame to show it's the center of his world, how it's lit perfectly so it highlights. It could be like a piece of concept art for something. And this shot means a lot to me. And we stay here long enough for the audience to start to think, has nobody noticed? He's lying here dead, has nobody noticed? And that's a scary thought. And then we see this happen. We get a glimmer of hope when someone walks into the frame. You think someone's noticed. And then this is almost kicking him while he's down because this happens. And he obviously puts the coins into the tin. And then you see two more people cross through the frame, and we are left just with the homeless man. And that's, at this point, I want the audience to be thinking, no one's noticed. And I want them to be sort of upset that no one's noticed that he's been left. And they've got so many questions racing through their minds at this point of, how's no one noticed? And then the homeless man and the voiceover says this.
Would you know the difference?
That basically is the time when I wanted, for the first time, the homeless man addresses us as an audience. We are now, before this we were thinking, why has no one noticed? Why is no one helping? And for him then to ask us, would you know the difference? That is intrusive. It's someone sort of, it's not an insult, but it's a genuine question that you're not going to like the answer to. Now, the inspiration for this film came from when I stayed in the Hilton in Manchester, and I'd walked back to the hotel after we'd been out for food, and we'd walk past homeless people lying on street corners like this, and it came to my attention that you wouldn't know, and you could just walk past without not doing anything, and that was heartbreaking and very upsetting. And then you would walk past them, and you would go into the Hilton, go up to the top floor and have drinks for the rest of the night, and you'd look down on the same streets where you knew they were. And when you see the time-lapse shots in this film, they were filmed from the same bar at the top of the Hilton that I had the idea for the filming. And I would look down at those exact shots and see the world moving along. And I knew I wanted to express something from that. I knew there was something to be said that was important. And people can voice their opinions and beliefs through music, through poems, and because I have no real talent, I do it through film. And that is my way of showing something that I felt was important, and that's what I wanted to do with this film. And then for him to address the audience like that is a public service announcement that you would not know the difference, and that's quite sad. I've even spoken to people who've watched the film and said they like it, but it wasn't their favourite thing I've done because it was so sad, and it left them sad at the end, and that was by design. We then stay on this shot for too long. We stay on this shot for way too long, and that's enough time for the audience to work out what that is, and then again to start to think and reflect upon sort of themselves in a way. And this sort of situation, it really lets that sink in. I wanted to really hit the nail on the head with that point. That was the last point of the film, and it also serves as to show us as an audience, this is the end. And then we cut back to the time-lapse shots again. This accentuates the point that the world moves on. Like I said earlier, the world moves on. And if you're not there to move on with it, it doesn't care. It's going to move on. Now, that's why we use time-lapses, because everything moves so fast. That was the way the world moves on so fast. And that's what we're trying to express here. And at this point, you'll hear in the music that loud pulse beat is louder than any time before. And that's because, well, the film, before we settled on the title Bridgewater Street, it went through many working titles, such as Pulsation. And that was when I sent the film over to the composer and we first started speaking to him about what we wanted it to be about. I told him the title was Pulsation, and we decided that the main thing I wanted to show was this city was practically alive. It was an organism of itself, and there was things going on. There was so much movement. It's as if the city was pulsating, and we decided we were going to have a beat in the background like a pulse. And it would start out quieter at the start, and then it'd slowly get louder throughout the film, and this is the loudest point for that. And that is showing the point that the homeless man is no longer here. But this guy here, who's on his phone, it doesn't affect him, it doesn't affect the people walking down the street, it doesn't affect the cars that drive past. There's so many people that move on in their everyday life without batting an eyelid, and that's the main point.
This is the sound of death. The same as life.
Now, that point in the film where he says, "This is the sound of death, the same as life, just darkness," that serves a purpose as it answers the question he asked at the very start of the film: what is the sound of death? Now, that's a weird note to start a film on. I've had people, when I read them the script, say, like, oh, it's one of those. And yeah, it is. And this is... I don't know whether I was being too full on with the point of the world moving on without you, but it's what I wanted to say, it's what I wanted to express, and I didn't know if I could solely do that with the images. So at the end we had the voiceover stating as clear as day that this is the sound of death, meaning when you die, things move on, and I wanted to show that through sound. So obviously it says the same as life, just darkness. As soon as it says darkness, we cut to black.
Just darkness.
Now we cut to black, losing all the image, yet the sound continues, and those sounds are the sounds of the city, the sound of the city at night time. And this is because I wanted to show that the homeless man's no longer here, so we cut to black. Yet that is the sound of death. The sound of death isn't anything crazy or spectacular. There's no more to it. There's nothing that happens after. There is just darkness in this view. This isn't necessarily it's the right view. It's just saying it is a view, that there is darkness, but the world still moves on, and that was shown through the sound. This is then reinforced when we go into the credits, and you'll see here there's no music in the credits. We could have had music in the credits, but there's not. It's just darkness and the sounds of the city, the sounds of people moving, the sounds of cars going past, and one very important sound that if you've paid this much attention, you'll notice. And when the credits come up, a lot of people think, oh, that's a weird ending, and just click off it, maybe give it a dislike and click off it. But those who stay through, I didn't want the film to end with just a cut to black. That seemed wrong in a way. I wanted it to continue through the credits, and not with an end credit scene that Marvel seems to be dominating in the superhero movies, with something more artistic than that. So we've got just see if you can hear it. I'm pretty sure you've heard it. Now that is, if you listen to this in surround sound or with headphones, you'll hear that coming from the left. Now that sound of the ambulance grows louder and louder as it gets closer, and if it's in surround sound, it'll move from left to right. And that is us getting a last sign of hope. There's no saving the homeless man at this point, but being recognised, that is all he's wanted throughout the entire film. He's wanted to not be invisible anymore. He wants to be recognised, and this is the last hope of that, the sound of someone actually acknowledging his presence. And we as an audience start to get hopeful, and we listen attentively to what happens next. And the saddest part is, it gets to its loudest point when it's right where we are, and the sounds that you're hearing now are from where the homeless man is. So you are now with the homeless man, you hear the ambulance coming towards you, and then you hear it go away. It gets to its loudest point, and it goes away. And that is representative of still no one's noticed him, and he's still lying on that street corner. And the ambulance goes away to probably look after somebody that is much more wealthy and much more, in quotation marks, important. Now, that is it for the director's breakdown of the film Bridgewater Street, and I'd like to say, if you've listened to this point, you are certainly the person this film is aimed towards. You are the person who cares enough about film to watch coming up to 50-minute video of me talking about a film that I've made. Now, I want it to be made clear that the importance of this isn't to show off anything. I don't think I do have too much to show off. I want to open a channel for discussion. If you've watched this far on, you're obviously into filmmaking, I'd love for you to leave a comment. Not only on Bridgewater Street, there's a link in the description to that, please leave a comment over there on what you thought of the film. I want some honest critique, some constructive criticism, because I aim to improve with each project I do, and I would really, really value your input. But also leave a comment here, and let me know what you think of this sort of video breakdown of a director's commentary of one of my films, because I have other films that I could do this for if anyone's interested in seeing them, because I'm not claiming to be a professional. I'm not complaining to sort of saying that I know everything. I'm an entry-level filmmaker. These are my attempts at making short films, and I'd love to hear what people think about them and what I can improve upon, because I aim to improve with everything I do. And yeah, that's sort of why I'm wanting to do this. So please, if you like this, give it some support, and make sure you check out the film. Link in the description. Anyway, I think I'll end that here. I'd like to say a massive thank you for watching. My name's Edward Midgley, professional small cog in a big machine.